What if the world is on the brink of a new war? Are we witnessing a dangerous rehearsal for a continental-scale conflict? As tensions rise, President Zelensky openly calls for the ruthless destruction of Russians within his borders. But even more alarming is the unprecedented call for NATO to engage in direct aerial combat with Russian aviation, signaling an escalation we have never before seen. Could these words be more than mere rhetoric? As we speak, preparations are underway in Prague and Warsaw to deploy combat aircraft. The Czech government has confirmed its readiness to participate in air operations, indicating that we may be only steps away from a point of no return, where diplomatic solutions become impossible. In the meantime, please subscribe to my channel, HotPoint, give it a like and leave a comment of at least 7 words, and if you feel like it, share this video with others. It will really help my channel. Thank you, and let's keep going. But why is this happening now? The answer lies in what official sources are unwilling to disclose. Ukrainian officials no longer conceal their intentions. Military actions must extend beyond current borders, and discussions of a march on Moscow are no longer taboo in the corridors of power across Western capitals. The Kremlin's response was immediate. Emergency meetings were held overnight, and total mobilization plans are now on the table. Russian aviation is being redeployed to the western borders, while in Brussels, secret negotiations are underway regarding red lines. NATO is poised to protect the airspace of neighboring countries by any means necessary. This raises a critical question. Are we facing a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO? It is no longer a matter of if, but rather when. The clock is ticking, and the urgency is palpable. We want to hear from you. Are there signs of military preparations in your region? Your insights, especially from border areas, are crucial. Stay tuned as we continue our analysis in just a moment. Unprecedented events are unfolding right before our eyes. Poland and the Czech Republic, once satellites of the Soviet Union, are now openly declaring their willingness to engage Russian aircraft. Behind closed doors in Brussels, the reality is clear. NATO is transitioning toward direct military confrontation with Russia. What seemed unthinkable just yesterday is now being discussed as a genuine scenario. In a shocking development, the former Brother Republic is facing a catastrophic exodus of draft-age men. Consulates in Warsaw and Bucharest are overwhelmed by a flood of refugees, with reports indicating tens of thousands fleeing each month. The army is suffering critical losses in personnel, leading to a dire situation. In a desperate bid, the Kyiv regime is considering an unprecedented move: the mass recruitment of mercenaries from Central Asia. Talks are ongoing with Tashkent and Bishkek, but Moscow has quickly reacted to this maneuver. The Kremlin has warned Central Asian nations that any involvement in the conflict on the opposing side will lead to serious repercussions, including potential blockages of money transfers and restrictions on migrant workers. Such measures could inflict devastating blows on the economies of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. We are witnessing a situation where a localized conflict threatens to escalate into a global confrontation. NATO is preparing for direct aerial conflict with Russia. Central Asian countries are embroiled in a perilous game, and European security hangs by a thread. A troubling signal emerged just a few hours ago. Our sources in Brussels have revealed a secret meeting where a scenario was discussed that could completely reshape the balance of power. What we learned is causing significant concern among diplomatic circles. The situation is developing rapidly and unpredictably. Analysts are warning that we are on the verge of a new geopolitical reality, the contours of which are just beginning to emerge. Experts agree that the coming weeks could be pivotal for the future architecture of international security. The stakes are rising with each passing hour. A neighboring country has openly called upon NATO for direct aerial engagement with Russian VKS. This is no longer a matter of diplomatic posturing. We are witnessing a genuine attempt to draw the alliance into a full-scale conflict with Russia. Tensions are running high within NATO's headquarters in Brussels. If Russian bombers continue to strike infrastructure in the west of Country 404, NATO aircraft may receive orders to take to the skies. Such a development would mark a transition to an entirely new and perilous phase of the conflict. Moscow has reacted immediately to these provocative statements. The State Duma is discussing the possibility of preemptive strikes on airfields in Eastern Europe, with leading senators emphasizing that the issue now extends beyond the defense of liberated territories to encompass all of Russia. Concurrently, a crisis involving labor migrants is unfolding. Following the former Western partners' negotiations with Central Asian nations for troop supplies, the Duma has issued a stern warning. Families of migrant workers in Russia may face serious consequences if their relatives engage against the Russian army. A complex web of contradictions is forming, with an air war against NATO, a migrant crisis, and Russian ultimatums creating a volatile mix. Neither side appears willing to back down. Each new statement inches us closer to the brink of significant escalation. Analysts suggest that the current situation bears resemblance to the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the world stood on the edge of nuclear war. According to reliable sources, Russia's armed forces are now on heightened alert, with strategic deterrence forces prepared for any eventuality. The Russian Ministry of Defense is conducting unplanned exercises in western military districts, demonstrating readiness for any scenario. Friends, it's crucial to hear your perspective. Where are you following these developments from? Share the name of your region or country in the comments so we can visualize the geography of our community. What do you think about the potential for direct confrontation between NATO and Russia? In a country bordering the Russian Federation, an unprecedented personnel crisis is unfolding. The mass exodus of draftees threatens the entire military campaign. Reliable sources indicate that the number of combat-ready units is rapidly declining, causing panic among the highest echelons of power. Society is divided into two camps. The radical faction demands draconian measures, including confiscation of property from the families of deserters and criminal prosecution of their relatives. Meanwhile, moderate voices warn that such an approach will only exacerbate the situation, provoking a new wave of flight. Corruption schemes at the borders are thriving, and the trade of false medical certificates has become a lucrative business. In the corridors of power, a shocking solution is being considered: mass recruitment of mercenaries from Central Asia. Plans are underway to form special units from foreigners, potentially altering the ethnic composition of the armed forces significantly. Brussels and Berlin are at a loss. European leaders are struggling to cope with the increasing influx of refugees, which is draining social systems. Local populations are growing increasingly dissatisfied, and the prospect of an additional wave of migrants from Asia is stirring genuine panic in European capitals. Political parties in the EU are beginning to leverage the issue of double migration as a pressure tool on voters. The situation intensifies with each passing day. The Uzbek factor may play a crucial role in this crisis, as negotiations with Tashkent proceed full steam ahead. What do you think about the possibility of Central Asian mercenaries appearing in the conflict zone? Share your thoughts in the comments. We are eager to hear your predictions for the development of this situation. The economic consequences of the crisis are also raising serious alarms. Analysts forecast a sharp contraction in production across key sectors and inflation rates soaring to record levels. The national currency continues to rapidly depreciate. What happens when geopolitical tensions spark an explosive crisis? Why is Uzbekistan suddenly showing interest in the conflict unfolding in country 404? As the situation escalates, how will the balance of power shift in Central Asia? These questions are crucial as the region faces a brewing storm of social and political upheaval. The critical labor shortage has reached alarming levels, threatening the stability of the entire region. The geopolitical landscape is growing increasingly complex. For a long time, Uzbekistan maintained a stance of neutrality, but recent developments indicate a shift as it begins to engage more deeply with the crisis in country 404. Analysts suggest that Tashkent is maneuvering to enhance its regional influence and capitalize on the current turmoil. Reports indicate that secret negotiations are underway, aiming at military technical cooperation and the exchange of human resources. This situation has transformed the conflict into a multi-dimensional geopolitical chess game, with Central Asia emerging as a pivotal player in the unfolding drama. Moscow has responded swiftly and aggressively. The Russian State Duma has raised the specter of possible deportations of labor migrants and restrictions on money transfers to countries in the region. These transfers are a vital source of foreign currency for the economies of Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. By leveraging the migration factor, the Kremlin is wielding significant pressure on millions of Central Asian workers, creating a tense atmosphere between Moscow and its traditional allies. As the fronts in the former Brotherly Republic heat up, military sources report preparations for a large-scale offensive. Social media is rife with aggressive calls for a march on Moscow, while some politicians openly discuss redrawing the borders established in 1991. The Kremlin perceives this kind of rhetoric as a direct challenge to national security. Global media outlets are noting a dangerous shift in the character of the conflict, moving from territorial disputes to direct threats against the Russian capital. Western experts are sounding alarms about the risk of catastrophic escalation, warning that compromise may soon become impossible. In recent days, diplomatic activity in the region has intensified. Kazakhstan and Tajikistan are also reevaluating their positions. Experts highlight that such changes in the balance of power could lead to the formation of new geopolitical blocs and alliances. The situation calls for careful monitoring and sober decision-making from all parties involved. In Brussels, clandestine negotiations are taking place that could dictate the future of the entire continent. The conversation is no longer limited to a local conflict. We are on the edge of a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia in the airspace over Country 404. Western partners have realized that this war has transcended regional boundaries. Former allies are now using the threat of airstrikes near EU borders as a crucial bargaining chip in discussions with the alliance. Their calls for direct NATO intervention grow louder by the day. Eastern Europe is showing particular enthusiasm, with Prague openly declaring its readiness to coordinate air operations. Warsaw is hinting at a tough response from Russia. This has elicited a predictable reaction from Moscow, ranging from discussions of a Third World War to threats of strikes against NATO airbases. Within the alliance, there is a lack of unity. While the eastern flank demands decisive action, Berlin and Paris are urging caution. Yet the pressure is mounting with each passing day. Sources suggest that the skies above this disputed territory may soon become an arena for direct confrontation between Russia and NATO. Our military experts emphasize that control of airspace is a critical factor. Russian aviation is methodically striking targets, demonstrating its superiority. In response, the Kiev regime is attempting to draw NATO deeper into the conflict, leveraging the fears of neighboring nations. The situation teeters on a knife's edge. Any decision could serve as the spark that ignites the powder keg. We are closely monitoring these developments and will keep you informed of any critical changes. In the comment section, we'd love to know from which part of the world you are following these events. Your perspective is invaluable for understanding the situation better. What do you think about the possibility of NATO intervention? Share your thoughts in the comments. Together, we might be able to predict the next twist in this unfolding saga. Let's not forget that this kind of confrontation could have unprecedented consequences for the global security framework. Analysts are warning that any miscalculation could lead to uncontrolled escalation, with unpredictable ramifications for the entire international community. A profound internal crisis has engulfed the neighboring state bordering Russia. Experts describe the situation as a hidden ticking time bomb. The mass exodus of draft-age men has effectively paralyzed the mobilization plans of the Kiev regime. Authorities are desperately trying to maintain control by tightening border checks and implementing draconian measures against draft dodgers. Society is increasingly divided, with some demanding even harsher measures, while others openly criticize corruption and double standards. Trust in the ruling elite is plummeting. In this critical scenario, the authorities have taken the unprecedented step of initiating secret negotiations to recruit foreigners into the military. According to sources, emissaries from the former Brotherly Republic are conducting closed consultations in Tashkent and Bishkek. Attractive offers, including citizenship, social benefits, and other incentives, are being put on the table for those willing to take up arms. The Ministry of Labor has reportedly prepared calculations that indicate tens of thousands of potential recruits each year. Moscow has swiftly reacted to these maneuvers, with the State Duma warning that if citizens from Central Asian countries participate in fighting against Russia, their compatriots could lose their jobs in the Russian Federation. Given that remittances from labor migrants are a significant part of the GDP for Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, such a step becomes a powerful lever of influence. The situation has evolved into a complex geopolitical game, where not only military interests but also economic concerns for the entire region hang in the balance. We invite you to share your assessment of these developments from your country. Let us know in the comments where you are following this situation from. Your insight is essential for a comprehensive analysis of what is happening. Local analysts predict that the situation will continue to deteriorate as the year draws to a close. They forecast that social tensions will reach a critical point during the winter, when economic hardships will weigh heavily on ordinary citizens. International observers are also noting signs of growing discontent in the western regions, which have traditionally been seen as bastions of the current regime. The migration crisis in the former Brotherly Republic is taking an unexpected turn. A massive influx of labor from Central Asian countries threatens to spiral into a social catastrophe. Brussels is already sounding the alarm, warning that European taxpayers may have to fund social programs for newcomers when the economy of Country 404 buckles under the strain. Moscow is standing firm on this issue. At the highest levels, discussions are underway regarding the possibility of widespread deportations of labor migrants from Russia, a measure that could affect millions. For Tashkent, Dushanbe, and Bishkek. This serves as a wake-up call, as the northern remittances from Russia are vital lifelines for their economies. On the military front, the situation is intensifying. Russian aviation is ramping up its strikes on the western regions of the northern Black Sea area. The air defense systems of the former Soviet Republic are operating at their limits, with effectiveness waning day by day. The Kiev regime is openly urging NATO to engage in aerial combat, recognizing that without Western fighter jets, a critical situation is unavoidable. Western experts acknowledge that the skies are becoming the key battlefield. Will the alliance risk direct confrontation with Russia? The fate of a country at a crossroads, and indeed, the future of global security, may depend on this. We are witnessing a historic moment where a regional conflict could expand into a global confrontation. We want to hear your thoughts. How do you evaluate NATO's readiness for direct confrontation with Russia? And from where in the world are you following these developments? Share your insights in the comments. Together, we can foster a better understanding of the events unfolding before us. Analysts emphasize that the situation is compounded by economic pressures from the international community, which only adds fuel to the fire. Are we witnessing the final nail in the coffin for social stability in the region? What secret negotiations are taking place between the Kiev regime and Middle Eastern nations? And how will these developments impact the already volatile situation on the ground? Recent reports reveal that the International Monetary Fund, commonly known as the IMF, is preparing a new set of demands that could potentially undermine the fragile social fabric of the region even further. As the IMF tightens its grip on financial institutions, the implications of these demands become more alarming. Observers fear that the introduction of these stringent conditions could lead to widespread unrest and dissatisfaction among the local populations, already grappling with economic hardships. Simultaneously, our sources have uncovered whispers of clandestine talks occurring between representatives of the Kiev government and several Middle Eastern countries. These discussions reportedly revolve around the procurement of military supplies, conducted discreetly and circumventing official channels. This alarming information raises serious questions about the motives behind such negotiations and the potential consequences for regional security. All of this is unfolding against a backdrop of escalating internal tensions, where local authorities are increasingly finding themselves unable to maintain control over the situation in border areas. The growing unrest points to a systemic failure of governance, leading to fears that the existing order is on the brink of collapse. As these dynamics evolve, the people living in these regions are left to wonder about their future. In summary, the combination of IMF demands and secretive military dealings paints a troubling picture for the stability and security of the region. As we delve deeper into these developments on Hotpoint, it becomes clear that we are at a critical juncture, with the potential for significant upheaval looming on the horizon. What lies ahead for the people caught in the crossfire of these complex negotiations? Only time will tell, but the stakes have never been higher.